Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Plum.
I rise for a point of personal privilege.
I kind of suspected that. Gentleman has the floor.
We don't want to pass up the opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, in due course, we'll have a budget. Been around here lots of years, so I've seen lots of delays, exercising our First Amendment rights, hearing from the people back home, a budget will emerge. But, Mr. Speaker, I must tell you that as I've listened to the discussion of the budget on the floor here in the House, it leaves me somewhat questioning whether we have a touch with reality of how we talk about our budget. I go back home every weekend and I talk to the folks too, and I get a slightly different message. And some of the messages I've gotten came most recently from an editorial in one of our prominent Virginia papers. Yesterday, an editorial says, entitled, "An Abandonment of School Funding." Public school advocates are in a slow boil in Richmond and in local government boardrooms across Virginia. They're rightfully angry about the dwindling amount the General Assembly is sending to cities and counties for education. They're ticked off about teachers having to contribute a bigger share to their state retirement account, in most cases without a raise. And they're frustrated that at time federal stimulus dollars has dried up, property values, the biggest source of revenue for local governments, continue to drop, meaning fewer dollars for education. As state lawmakers dicker over how much to provide school divisions this year, cities and schools are trying to figure out how to make do with less operating money. Construction funds were eliminated a long time ago. Near Stanton, a stalemate between the Augusta Board of Supervisors and the school board has resulted in an aggressive public campaign by teachers and parents to halt dozens of layoffs, keep open a school, and continue funding the regional governor's school. In Virginia Beach, hundreds of teachers, administrators, and parents have emailed city council members demanding that they make their schools a priority. Targeted for elimination this year, middle school and junior varsity sports and most summer school sessions. Class sizes are slated to increase, and 3 furlough days have been proposed for all school employees. Suffolk school leaders are clamoring for more money, but the plan so far includes no raises for the 4th year, cuts dozens of teacher assistants and bus monitors, and eliminates funding for the licensed practical nursing program. Hampton Roads' other cities are struggling too, with gaps in school budgets, wondering how to be fair to students and teachers and taxpayers. In Richmond, ire over the continued cuts in state money for schools from $6.7 billion in 2006 to $6.35 billion this year has been exacerbated by stagnant teacher salaries, now $7,000 below the national average, and still unknown hikes in health care and retirement contributions. For 16 of the past 20 years, the General Assembly has failed to fund teacher retirement adequately, and the governor has recommended that localities pay extra next year to catch up. In Virginia Beach alone, that would cost $19 million, nearly half the shortfall in the school's budget. The General Assembly has provided a model for setting aside monies and using them for other purposes. Lottery ticket sales, for example, which were supposed to augment education funding, have instead replaced it. In the past few years, even as lawmakers claimed they provided for the schools, they raided every possible school funding source. Now state leaders say a tax increase, no matter how dire the need in education and transportation, is a non-starter. So the anger builds. Virginia, the 7th wealthiest state in the nation, ranks 35th in per-pupil state funding. In just 3 years, Virginia's annual average contribution per student dropped 17%. As teachers, parents, and administrators organize to fight more cuts, they need to remember who has the state's legal responsibility for funding the public schools that educate our children. Since 2006, cities have had to shore up school budgets because the General Assembly played a shell game with its education money, even as it failed to reduce costly mandates. The editorial ends by saying, it's time to put the pressure where it belongs. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I would say that if we're going to have a delay in the budget and we still have 2 weeks to go, it might be worth our time to go back and realistically look at the House budget. Don't believe it's quite as good as we think it would be, even though we continue to pat ourselves on the back. Realistically, Mr. Speaker, we continue to have a decline in public education funding per pupil. That's not satisfactory. We talk about how much we are opposed to tax increases, but go home and talk to your local supervisors about what's going to happen to the property tax rate. It's likely to rise, not because of their action, but because of our inaction. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.